This is Primitive Outfitting, and you are listening to the Gritty Bowmen.
Chicken, wow, wow.
Wow.
Nice.
And I'm not standing on my high horse saying I shoot a self-bow, because there's no way in hell I'm shooting a self-bow. When I say that, I mean that in a good Christian way.
As far as Cecil goes with me, I mean, I could really give a crap about that lion too much.
And all I was looking at was the tip of Aron's arrow. And it was like this and this, and then it was kind of shaking, and then it went boom, solid like a rock. And I'm like, oh.
He's like, I got to know if you hit anything or not. You never really show excitement, because I don't. I'm kind of always mellow. And this thing, ready to jerk a tear. I was running around like an idiot. Woo! You know, if you ever talk to anybody from Africa, they're all about hunting lions because they eat people. Yeah. The compound, I have total confidence. With this thing, I'm like, yeah, maybe. But the way that America works, we're so soft, like softer than baby. All of us, basically.
The shooting errors, I'm going to call it Matrix effect. I panicked.
From the beginning of time, man has kept and idolized animals.
I may need more coffee than I initially anticipated. This is going to be a long trip.
They've got totem poles of carvings and wood carvings. They've got bear claws, and they've got ivories and carved.
Some of them they made weapons.
Antlers.
Some of them were hanging on the wall. Next day, we let out on a big grizzly, a big interior and an 8-foot plus grizzly. And Bart just yells, "Run!"
All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Bowmen podcast. Aron and I are a little rusty. I'm checking the audio meters here.
I have some sexy phlegm going on, though. I have been sick.
Yes. We just got back from our respective bear hunts. You were in British Columbia. Yeah. I was on Prince of Wales Island, Southeast Alaska.
I was with...
Who was wetter?
Mr. I bet you were, although it was pretty...
Yeah.
Man, I'm soft when it comes to rain, being in Colorado. It's just, it's not like I whine and cry all day, but I definitely, you wake up and it's foggy or, drizzle. And then at noon, it's foggy and drizzly, and it just doesn't go away. There's a few days it went away, but for the most part, it rained every day. It snowed some, too.
We got quite a bit of rain, on POW Island, but... It was, we got some really sunny days, too, mixed in there. The day we shot our bears, Chad and I shot our bears, it was a torrential downpour, and it was dark and dreary, and it was wet, super wet.
Yeah, we'll, I'm sure I see 75 different squirrels, but it's amazing how much your gear changes from one area to another, one type of hunter, another, and even from... that day from what you're doing to another as far as your clothing specifically, or we up there we went from mud and dirt down low to having snowshoes chasing the dogs. It was pretty wild.
I was going to say, for us, getting there April 30th or May 1st and then through like May 5th, it was still really cold.
Yeah.
And then by May 10th, it's hot.
Yeah.
A lot of it's warming up fast.
Yeah. I got to sit up. My chiropractor is going to yell at me. Austin, I got a horrible meme on our last podcast that I have to quit slouching or he's going to slap me.
Yeah. Well, today I have not actually, like anyone else that listens to the show, has not really heard about your bear hunt. So this is first for me, and then everybody else is going to get to hear the stories.
Yeah, I kept it quiet for the podcast.
Yeah.
It was an adventure.
So I want to go there. One of the things that, before we go there, a little controversial topic. We both, this happens every year when we go bear hunting. If we went turkey hunting, this would not happen. This is one of the stark differences between turkey hunting and bear hunting in the spring.
Yes, very much so.
We got a few comments on shooting bears, as we always do. And one of the comments recently was on YouTube. A fellow hunter, he got on there, left a comment, and he said, the bear rug on Aron's wall in his office in the background of this YouTube video that we're doing, and we're talking about perception and managing the perception of hunters or of non-hunters and stuff, and how we act. It was an old podcast episode. But his comment was, it was a little hypocritical for us to talk about that while we have a bear skin rug on the wall behind us, and that should be kept private, shouldn't be on a YouTube video. Hunting animals for meat is one thing, but hunting them and then displaying their hide or something like that is better left private.
And I'd like to add to that, this isn't about, because we do get guys, hey, you don't need to defend yourself. This isn't defending ourselves. It's a good
topic.
It's a good topic, and my views are a little bit more, they're more along the lines of yours, but I would say, I don't say redneck views or whatever, but I mean, it's a double-edged sword, one, because if you don't show that you kept it, immediately it's going to be you wasted everything. Not just the meat, you wasted the hide, you wasted everything. Mm-hmm. Most people know with me, I don't hardly keep anything. That just happened to be a giant bear, and the dude hooked me up with a discount. We just salted it. I mean, it's not a rug. As far as keeping it on the wall, like in Kafaru here, I've got a couple of my elk heads, a bunch of sheds. There's some African stuff from Patrick. As far as the perception, one thing I immediately, when you brought that up 5 minutes ago, the amount of interior decorators that have asked me for bear rugs, and not from hunting, not people that hunt, right? These are ritzy people that have never touched a gun. They want a bear and a rug on the wall. For whatever reason, it's weird, the dynamic. It's rustic.
It's frontier-like. It's
mountainish.
Yeah.
And so I don't think there's anything. I kept the meat from that. Well, I didn't keep actually the meat. Ryan kept it. We ate some of it, but I mean, Ryan kept the meat and made it into burger from that specific bear. I can tell you the bear I shot this week that I had the rug salted and tanned. It'll get sent back to me. We ate one of the roasts that night, and we cooked it up in the Traeger, and he brought the Traeger up. Lander did, so he cooked everything. Now, I left that bear, some of that with Lander, and then a guy that was driving back, Kyle, who booked a hunt, he took the rest of it. So it didn't go to waste. I personally, full honesty, I didn't try and fly that meat back because it was a pain. Now, if no one was going to take it, I probably would have, but I just didn't take it back because it was kind of a pain, and I knew Kyle did not have as much meat as I had at my house, so it's just, helping out a fellow guy.
Not to mention there's a, we'll be doing a lot of, our freezers are pretty full right now.
Right.
And then we're going to be doing more hunting later, so it's great to give it away.
Yeah, when people need it, and that's kind of what I base mine off of.
There's nothing wrong, I think it's great that hunters go out, hunt, and then they sell. What's bad is when you waste meat.
Yeah. Well, and the guys at Kafaru here beg me for, they all eat wild game. So, I'm always, and I've had people comment on, oh, so you just shoot it for no reason and give the meat away? Well, if I went to Whole Foods and bought 85 pounds of whatever and gave it away, no one's going to say anything about that. But just because I harvested it, now I'm a bad person because I give it away. People are stupid is what it is. But as far as the bear rug thing, for me, I don't see that it's, I think what it represents is the fact that I did bring it back. I did take the time to keep it. I did keep the meat. It's not wasting. And I say, yeah, that's a bear that I shot in, whatever. Yeah. North Idaho is a good trip, and talk about it. And I'm the last guy to start bugging about hanging stuff on the wall for bad representation, because I get bashed on both ends because I leave my animals hanging in a tree, the head, most of the time. In fact, you had to throw a serious sales pitch on bringing my elk head back, which is now laying behind us in this teepee. No, it's in that one, but yeah. I don't think it's a bad representation. Now, if I would have left all of the meat and people, said, yeah, I didn't keep the meat in Idaho, you don't have to, but I took home the rug, completely different story. But
I think that there's for me, when I think about, it's funny how people perceive things, because I look at it from the perspective of it's disrespectful to leave it behind. If it's something that you can salvage and is useful or adds value to your home or to your surroundings. Like we were talking earlier, I just got back from Southeast Alaska, and there's native Indian tribes there. I'm not sure how you pronounce the names, the Haida and the Tlingit. And I've done a lot of reading about them since being on the island, just like I read a lot about the island itself and have done a lot of research on the place, because I just think it's fascinating to learn about the histories there. And the same thing happens there. I mean, they from the beginning of time, man has kept and idolized animals. They've got totem poles of carvings and wood carvings. They've got bear claws, and they've got ivories and carved.
Some of them they made weapons.
Antlers.
Some of them were hanging on the wall.
Yeah, they utilized that stuff, and they found beauty in it, and they collected it. Skulls the same way, decorated skulls.
Well, and let's face it. I mean, I'm a buff in mountain men because I've studied everyone known to man, but the white man did not come up with scalping. That was the Native American, and that was the trophy. I mean, I've read up greatly a lot on that, and in certain tribes, piles of scalps hanging off, the side of the horse or whatever, it showed power. Do I want to have a bunch of bear rugs hanging off the side of my, office to show power? No, but from the beginning of time, things were kept as
Very
trophies.
True. I think that, somewhat the motive behind why you keep a trophy is partly what makes it disgusting or distasteful to people.
Yep. Yeah.
And, like when you're keeping, 10 white man scalps, it's kind of disgusting because in general, the motive probably wasn't the purest.
Like, Del Jew, I'll shave my head so you can't scalp me.
But then there's maybe there was a lot of my point is that when you have a memento from a hunt, where you've kept a skull, a hide, or antlers, or whatever. I get this sometimes from other hunters who are like, "Yeah, keep it for sure. Just don't let anybody see it."
Yeah,
that's the part I just can't disagree with more, because to me, we as hunters, if you're going to utilize the hide, and I have a bear rug that is like a cherished rug in our home. My kids are always on it. If you follow me on Instagram, you've seen us it's just part of our decor, part of the comfort of our home.
Yeah.
And every time someone comes over, they come, and especially if they've never been outdoors much, or they've never done hunting. I mean, they're fascinated by the rug. They're fascinated by the claws, and they go up and they touch it and they look at it and they pet it, they feel it. We as human beings are fascinated by animals. And those who aren't are just somewhat disconnected from nature, I think.
Yeah.
But to be fascinated by animals, it makes sense for us to want to surround ourselves with parts of the outside world that we find beautiful or fascinating. And I find bears just fascinating.
Off subject, but on the subject, Amy, my girlfriend, her mom, and pretty much anyone she knows is anti-hunting or non-hunting. And so the bear hunt was actually kind of a pro-hunting thing, because we got into conversations about bear hunting, right? Like, okay, Aron, you shot a black bear and you shot a grizzly. And I'm like, uh-huh. Okay, so, and then I posted a photo on Instagram of this grizzly that just popped out 2 kids. They're like that big. Oh, they're so sweet. So what happens? And I'm like, well, point in fact, what happens is when that, about 3 years old, grizzlies kick the cubs off. But the male grizzlies want to have sex with the female grizzlies, and the best way to get them to kick into cycle is they eat the kids. Now, for all the people that hate me, like I had a lot of I was doing a lot of deleting on Instagram from people from Brazil, whatever.
Yeah,
Brazilians don't like bears hunting. But what's amazing to me is when you start talking to those people, they think of bears warm, cuddly, and fun. Right? They've been humanized so much, and they don't really realize that basically the power that a grizzly specifically and a black bear has as a predator, like what they're eating. Like I've seen black bears specifically looking at us calling, knowing we're humans when we're calling elk, and they want it to be a calf elk so bad that they will not leave in hopes that it's a calf elk. They just keep coming, right?
Right.
And then, you take into, like, I've watched one grizzly and with my own eyes and a couple on video eat the cubs, right? And it's not pretty. I mean, those grizzlies, they're not eating the cubs for food. I mean, they get food out of it, but they want that sow to go into cycle. They want to they want to be able to breed. She will not breed again until those cubs are gone, and so they kill them. People hear that are anti-hunting. They're like, "Oh, I thought it was something I pet."
Yeah. You hear that about lions too, and I don't know like the ins and outs. Correlation is not causation. I don't know if they're actually doing it to bring the sow into heat. I just know that they do it. They kill cubs.
Yeah,
right. Well, it makes sense that's why.
I asked, and that's what
biologists.
I asked a few people because an outfitter told me once, and I've had outfitters feed me some shit, right? So I wanted to make sure. So then I asked the biologist, and that's what they said was she will not go into cycle or whatever until that cub's out of the picture, and so they eat the cub. Yeah, whether that's true 100% or not, I don't know, but I do know they eat the hell out of them. There's no denying.
No, and I think that when it comes to hunting bears, they're just like any other species. I want them to be healthy, strong, and thriving animals on the landscape. I also want caribou and moose and elk and other critters to be thriving on the landscape. And I want human beings to be thriving on the landscape. And one of the best ways to do that is for hunters to actually hunt, to get out and partake of the landscape, harvest our food in the wild, harvest our elk or deer and all those critters in the wild, through a management system where we all get allotted a certain number of tags and we're tracking the populations of each species. And when one species seems as though it's dominating another and others are endangered, we hunt that one more. We don't hunt the other. It's just it's common sense to be responsible about how we harvest animals. And it's not unlike you read about Native American cultures. One of my favorite books is The Land of the Spotted Eagle by Luther Standing Bear. And he has he talks about how Native Americans practiced game management, basically. They purposely, killed certain male-only hunted in certain ways where the population would thrive at its most while they also partook of it quite a bit. Yeah. And we do the same thing today. But I think that it's foolish for hunters to have the attitude that we need to hide our utilization of the animals that we harvest.
Yeah, it's how you utilize it.
To say, it's appropriate to keep it for its meat, but any other reason is wrong. I think that there needs to be a lot more education in the space of explaining ourselves when it comes to why we feel it's appropriate to keep an animal's, to make an ivory necklace out of elk ivories, or to hang an elk on your wall, or to keep a bearskin rug or something like that. I think all of those things, there's valid reasons for those mementos, for keeping those things. And one of the things that gets to me when it comes to a rug, like one of my favorite things in our home is that bearskin rug.
Yeah.
And we'll lay on it, use it. I'm a big proponent of actually using a rug instead of hanging it on the wall. But I mean, everybody can do what they want to do. But I love having it just be part of the furniture in our home. If I were to replace that with something else, a wool rug is not the same thing.
Yeah.
Fur from another animal, is it okay if it's a white-tailed deer?
I don't know. That's where it gets goofy as crap to me, is what is acceptable and
when you're using some kind of synthetic or alternate textile to add comfort and warmth to your home where you live, is that less harmful to the to the landscape? I mean, look at all the chemicals. And
I was just at someone's house that's an anti-hunter that was having a sale because they're moving, and there was purses stacked up, right? Like 30 of them. 90% of those purses were leather. Some of them were different types of animal, and I'm thinking whether it be a cow or an elk or a stingray boot, fish or whatever, I mean, something died, right? I mean, it didn't die of natural causes. We probably killed it. Whether in her case, the stainless steel rods shot it in the head and killed it, or some dude in Africa shot a lion and now she's got a lion purse. She's an anti-hunter, and she has all these bags. There's a lot of hypocrisy, with that. And as far as the management, like you were talking about, I don't know what it would be like at Landers. It'd be like that movie Planet of the Apes. It said, except it would be bears if they weren't managed, because in that
They're
one
thriving.
Oh man, in that one photo,
There
was
6
5,
bears?
6, yeah, whatever. Well, there was 12 at one time. I didn't have, and it was, you want to talk about weird. I'm dropping down in there to try and shoot this one just tank, right?
Uh-huh.
And as I'm stalking in, you can hear bears in the wood line that I'm sneaking on because I waited for them to peel out, and this one to be left over. And I closed the distance from 500, and I think I ended up at 32 yards, and it was actually funny how it ended up. I can hear them huffing at me in the wood line as I'm walking by, multiple. And they hunt that a lot. Give it 10 years without hunting, that will just be bears. And and then diseases and all that stuff comes into play. So definitely
it would equalize on its own. There'd be enough predation on the food source that it would just kind of die off, and then the bears would die off. They would encroach on human settlement areas, and then people would be demanding that they be killed. And
Aspen, Colorado is a very good example of that.
It's just by appropriate management, it's the best way. But I think when it comes to utilizing an animal, keeping a hide, a head, a part of it as well as the meat, I think it's absolutely valid to do that. And hunting, I absolutely hunt bears for their fur. There's absolutely no other. That's why I hunt bears. I like the meat, but the fur is a natural recurring, and this bothers people, but it is a natural resource.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful natural resource. That hide and that bear fur is just amazing.
Yeah, especially right out of the den.
It's like 6 inches long on this bear I shot. I mean, it's incredible, and no disrespect to the animal. I love it, but that's a major reason for going is for that fur.
Yeah.
And that's been true since the beginning of time.
Oh yeah, forever. There's no doubt about that.
And like you said, I mean, how wasteful it would be if you didn't utilize those bears. And that's what my whole point is. Why why not manage that group, utilize it as a natural recurring resource, rather than impact the environment alternatively through some other means by.
Oh, and I've heard some numbers thrown out of how many bears get shot in Washington by us paying government officials to kill them. 600-800 bears a year.
Dude,
just
like
ridiculous.
cougars in California and so on. I mean,
so,
it's not like they're not shot. They're just shot and put in a dumpster.
Yeah, exactly. And I was going to say, and no one's benefiting off of that at all. So, I mean, after, I guess that, yes, the bear hunt, which there's a lot to cover in this because of some of the different ways we hunted these bears, which is going to be very debatable. But Brian and I are always ones to tell the full truth and nothing but the truth. So a quick backstory. We may have to make this into 2 parts, and that first part being the first part 1. But
yeah,
I went on a 10, 11-day grizzly hunt last year with Cal from First Light and a guy named Aaron Evans, and through Jeff Lander Primitive Outfitting. Backpacked in 10, 11 days. It did not, that story will be short, did not turn out so well. Kifaru, obviously for marketing or whatever, what better marketing to do a backpack grizzly hunt, right? It was, you had the sawtooth for a shelter. Just a great adventure, I guess you could say. We documented it very well, except we didn't shoot a grizzly. We shot a moose on the last day. So this year, Lander said, come back up. And Patrick Smith, the owner of Kifaru, he also had a grizzly tag. And then I had a black bear tag, and we were going to hunt them in the spring down low. I was a little uncertain about that because I didn't know if I could sit long enough on some of these fields. And so one thing led to another, and Bart Lancaster, who is Clay Lancaster's brother. Clay is the guy I worked with. They're helped out up in the NWT, basically just followed around anyway and took photos. Bart is his brother. Bart controls the majority of all tags on Tiburon Island for desert, as well as some in the Baja. guy's probably one of the most well-known guides in the world. He also runs, his luck would have it, grizzlies with dogs, which I didn't even know happened. He runs bobcats, lynx, mountain lions. The dude is he's fun to hunt with, for one, but the dude, as far as like sheep, he's been on some of the largest stone sheep. The guy's a genius when it comes to hunting. But he tells me about the dogs, and he's like, hey, I'll bring them up. Let's give it a try. And I'm like, dude, I'm down for anything like that. That sounds crazy. So you just let the dogs out, and they chase it down to a walking bay up, and you catch it and shoot it? And he's like, sort of, yeah. He's like, sometimes it's quicker than others, or you'll catch them on a logging road. And I'm like, well, this may be perceived pretty piss poor to some of the people in the public, but let's give it a whirl. I'm down for it. Let's try it. It's something I've never done. So it happened. We get out there, and Bart tells me right off the bat, he's like, this is not conducive to this area is not
the country.
It's not great. Yeah, it's horrible, right? There's not enough logging roads crisscrossed and things like that, but let's give it a whirl. So I still have a bear tag in my pocket. There's a lot of snow and a lot of rain, and Bart immediately, when we're driving around, goes, the bears are going up there. And this is like above tree line, like in the snow. And I'm like, no way. So sure as crap, we let those dogs out on the second day. They ran from 8 o'clock in the morning, and we did not pick them up till 9 o'clock that night. In the midst of that, at about 2:30 in the afternoon, we're looking at the GPS, right? The dogs all have collars. It's hound dogs and Criollan bear dogs. And the Criollan's, these dogs are awesome. And he's like, they're going to come out on that knoll here and keep an eye out. And I'm watching, and because, we see on the GPS, Cornice Slope, out comes a grizzly with 4 dogs behind it running. I mean, literally 3,000 feet above our heads. And I'm like, so do we have to go get those dogs? He's like, yeah, they get it back there. We got to hike back there. And I'm like, wow, this is going to be interesting. So he's like, hey, he leaves the long range antenna, pulls it out of the truck, pulls the receiver unit, the GPS, leaves it in the woods. Says, let's go back, get ready for this, because this could be a long, long night. Grab snowshoes, whatever. Go back, and we come back a couple hours later, and the dogs had crossed that mountain range, went down the other side to where you and I were in the burn. Came hooked over, came back up and around, came down 8 miles to our left of where we were, and are now slightly closer to the road. So he's like, all right, let's get after it. Let's go try. And we hike for 3 hours straight up, and that bear lost those dogs in the cliffs. We ended up finding the dogs. And I'm like, this is way different than I thought, right? There's nothing, because at first I'm like, this is going to be kind of weird. Dogs are across the road, shoot the bear.
Yeah.
Nothing. I mean, I was like, I may need more coffee than I initially anticipated. This is going to be a long trip. So the next day, we let the dogs rest a little bit, and we head out and try and shorten this down. I won't tell every crazy story. We let out on another bear, but we're unsure basically what, the dogs just barked. Mm-hmm. We let the hound out, and he's going crazy. Yeah, I hear him yell back, let the Criollians go. And dude, to say those dogs don't want to do what they're doing, like for people, dog lovers, like, I can't believe you do that. Those dogs are so like they're pissed when they're not running. Like, I let the dog box like an idiot open with me in front. That Criollan, that trigger came out. He hit me so hard in the stomach, I almost puked, and it knocked me to the ground. And he hit the ground, didn't even look back, and was gone. Like, okay, I'm ready. And so the dogs are like, you can tell they're just happy with what they're doing, right?
It's like saying a wolf doesn't like to hunt.
Yeah. They're bred to run, right?
They're this is the purpose.
Yeah.
For their drive, their fulfillment comes from working.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And you can see that they are happy when they're doing that. So they, he looks at the GPS and immediately tells me, he's like, there's a grizzly. He's like, it's going straight up. And it literally is is doing nothing but climbing, straight vertical, like contour
So
lines
is
are
it
touching.
walking or is it like just
No, they're running. And you can see the distance from the collars on the dogs. They're running. Because once they walk, it's a walking bay up to, so to speak. I'm not an expert at this. I only did it for like 8 days.
So you got to get the bear tired to get him to well, they don't get tired.
Takes a long time. This bear didn't get tired. And so it's climbing, and Bart, there's some 4-letter words coming out of Bart, and he's like, this, by this time I figured out Bart was sick, drinking out of my water bottle and sharing sunflower seeds, so he's sick. But Bart's, he's harder than woodpecker lip, so he's like, well, we had watched She's Out of My League the night before, so you got to watch that movie. He's like, boys, I think we're going to Branson. Get your stuff. So we literally are like, wow. So but the bear, it doesn't slow, right? It's climbed so much. At this point, he's like, there's no use going after this thing for quite a while. We have no idea what it's going to do. So we go back. This is like 5-6 days into the hunt. We go back to get a couple more guys. On the way back to meet Bart, there's a giant black bear on the side of the road. And I'm like, stop the truck. And Lander's like, can you kill that thing? I'm like, yeah, it won't take very long. And he's like, no, I mean, Bart's kind of waiting for us. I'm like, we got an extra 5 minutes, won't be that bad. And it's not like it was this crazy, it was kind of anticlimactic stalk because he drives down the road. I jump out. I kind of hook into the wood line and maybe 100-yard stalk to get up on this hump. And the bear was just out of the den. He was kind of, not 100. I mean, you could tell he's
loopy.
Pooped. Yeah, a little loopy. And I ranged it and shot it. And I will say, whatever sales pitch you guys give us crap or not, but that Gravedigger broadhead just crushed that thing. Yeah. I hit it here, and it turned a little when I shot, and it actually came out its chest between its legs. And the arrow buried a foot into the ground, and the bear went 15 yards.
Were you using the cut-on contact or the chisel
I used the
tip?
cut-on contact because that's what I was going to use for grizzly as well, cut-on contact with the mechanical.
Yeah.
And it went, Lander was amazed because it was buried into the ground a foot. And
because he's traditionally been kind of against mechanical.
He does not like mechanical.
But this is more like a fixed mechanical hybrid.
Yep, it's got a 7/8 cut-on contact.
If it doesn't deploy with the mechanical piece, you still have like a true fixed blade.
Yeah, and so by the time the truck hadn't even got out of sight, and I'm waving them back, so they thought I blew the stock. And they come back, and Lander's like, "What happened?" I'm like, "Killed it." He's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's dead, dude. It's huge." And it's a good bear. It's not a giant bear, but I mean it's 7-footer. I mean it's a good bear.
Yeah.
So we run over.
Beautiful bear.
Yeah, it's a very good cape on it, and we get over to it, and there's my arrow sticking in the ground with only about 20 inches out of the dirt, and then there's 15 yards away the bear, and he's looking back, and he's like, well, and keep in mind, Lander was a huge proponent of me going trad last year. He's like, well, you could have killed it with a javelin missile too. And I was like, yeah, I know, dude. And it wasn't a far shot, but it was pretty far.
Oh, come on, how far?
It was far. I'm not even going to say on the podcast. It was for me. It wasn't that far. It was 72 yards is how far it was. And I pinwheeled it right where I aimed it, but it did corner it slightly. Would have killed it either way, whatever happened. But I was shooting the Carbon Spider 34, 86 pounds, with a 548 grain arrow or something. I had that cut-on contact Gravedigger.
Isn't it Carbon Defiant?
What did I say?
Spider?
Oh, yeah, sorry, not the Spider. Carbon Defiant 34. That's the one I had before was the Spider. Carbon Defiant 34. And I shot it with a back tension, and that was another thing because I had set up to shoot a wrist rocket in case there was a bear grizzly charging because I can't operate that faster, or a back tension. But with the back tension, I had it on the clicker. Literally, it's mawing on. It was as clean a shot as you could get when it broke free. But yeah, so Lander gave me a little bit of crap looking back. Like, does it feel the same as it did with a trad bow? I'm like, I don't know, dude, grab its legs. Let's get this thing in the truck. So we drug it back to the road, and we had there's several guys with us. We went and got on that bear, right?
Yeah.
So we, Gary from last year,
yep.
And I and Bart, I'm like, hey, just get one. I'm worried about getting fat because I'm eating too much food. I'm like, I'll just take whatever, right? I'll take a frame. Don't worry about that. Well, Bart doesn't take a pack, and let me tell you, that little engine can go. He's may not be very tall, but he just takes off, and it's literally the Devil's Club moss, straight up timber, no undergrowth because it's too thick. And we get up there, and we go way. I mean, we probably climb an hour straight. Like, he didn't stop. So we're up there, and we're hitting snow, and he hooks to the right. And he looks back, because I got a bow, right? I don't have a gun with me. And he looks back, and he's like, "Knock an arrow, get ready. The dogs are down there." And I guess these dogs, when they get to a walking bay up, they're literally just the bear and the dogs are walking. There's no biting and snapping going on. They just
follow the bear and bark at it
like a wolf, yeah. And they're not even barking at this point. Which
they just follow it, and the bear just walks, and they just kind of all just walk together.
Well, so right now the pucker factor for me is lighting up, right? I'm like. Because it's a vertical cliff on the other side with the creek, right? And so I'm like, immediately my, I guess you say my hunting brain kicks in, because I'm like, there's a very likely possibility that bear got cliffed out, and the dogs, they're just following that giant rock cliff down. And so I knock an arrow, and I start ranging everything, and then I see Trigger and Geo, the two Krillians, and no bear. So I'm like, okay, and we're assuming that bear got in the water or cliffs and, it got loose. So by this time, Bart's like, "Look, dude, we have got to catch these bears on the low road, and we got to get to that second road fast and just get it crossing before it's time." I mean, literally like 30 minutes after you let him go. So, and again, I'm trying to keep this as short as I can. So a few twists and turns aside, we come back from that night. We get the bear cleaned up. And
the black bear.
The black bear. We get we put that one roast in the Traeger, and next day we let out on a big grizzly, like a big interior and an 8-foot plus grizzly. And we're in the truck, and he's looking at the GPS, and he's trying to figure out where the dogs are going to intersect the road with the bear in front of it, and he guesses, because there's a split where they're going to either go right or left in the topography, and he stops, and he's like, "Get out, get out, get out." Well, at this time now, Lander is fine if I shoot it with a bow or a gun, but he's like, "Dude, if you can kill a mature male with a gun, you're not going to hurt my feelings." So Bart looks at me, he's like, "I don't think it's going to be going too fast. You're not going to be able to kill it with a bow." So I'm like, "All right." So I grab the, I think it was the Talkeetna 375. Obviously, I didn't really pay attention to what guns, but I think that's the one I grabbed. It was a 375, and Bart just yells, "Run!" And so, I'm like, okay. So I run as fast as I can, thinking Bart will eventually say stop, and I'm on a dead sprint for like 400 or 500 yards, and then I stop because I'm like, it's got to be this drainage. And so I drop to a knee, and I'm about to cough up a lung, and out comes Trigger and Geo, and I'm like, I'm cussing a lot is what I'm doing. And I go down, and there's the grizzly tracks. He beat me to the punch, right? He got the road faster. So at that point now, we're like, it didn't work like we planned it. Let's catch tracks going down the other way. We ran a couple more. They ran into the river. Another problem, right? That they crossed that river, the dogs aren't, and we can't even go over there really. So we finally chalk it up to, okay, we're probably just going to have to hunt differently, or get lucky on this. The bears crossing on that first road really quick, and the chance of me shooting with a bow that way are not good. So I opt to sit on the fields because that's where the bears are coming out. And in the midst of all that, obviously, we twice I got within sight of 60 yards once was within 100 yards and once was within 60 on two other grizzly spot and stock. The dogs struck. When the dogs struck, we physically tracked them, knowing where they were probably going. And one was in a field that you did a lot of video in last year.
Yeah.
And I'm on my knee, and this bear's feeding to me, right, a grizzly. And it's when I first ranged it, it was 189. and Bart's like, it's a 7.5 footer, and he's like, what do you think? I'm like, oh yeah, I'll kill it. I'm like, dude, that thing looks giant to me from here. I'm like, because even a 7-foot grizzly or 7.5 foot grizzly compared to a 7-foot black bear, they're just bigger. That thing stands up on its hind legs, and it's marking its territory, basically, is what Bart had said. And I don't know anything about grizzlies, really. So I get in on it, and I just don't get a shot. I could have shot it with a gun, and Bart had a rifle with him.
Critter to get in on.
Well, when we were stalking in on it, I'm weaving through the weeds, and Bart's behind me, and Bart knows that I know semi what I'm doing. I'm not going to do anything stupid, but at one point he came up and he's like, you haven't done it yet, but try not to cross me when I'm in on the final stalk. He's like, if it gets to a point, I'll pivot from you, but you're trying to get within 40, 50 yards, so you don't want to scare it either. So if it's noisy for Bart to, basically he doesn't want to get into a point if the bear's charging to eat me where he can't
Get a shot.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we get to 40, 52, whatever it was, and just the arc of my arrow, there was branches, and I couldn't get a shot. What was crazy is I got into like 18 yards where we thought it laid down under a spruce tree, and Bart looks back, and he's going like this. It had bedded for just a few seconds and went back to the road 28 yards from me. Bart and I didn't see it. We go back on the road, and we just catch the tail of it going up over into the swamp. We didn't get it. So I'll just go to the final day. Last day of the hunt, last evening, we knew this grizzly was the Field of Dreams.
Yep.
It's crossing on that road. So we just sit on, and it's me and Lander and Dave, one of his buddies, and Dave is funny. Dude is the coolest guy.
Yeah.
He was hilarious. So Lander, and you know how Gary is. If you say park here, Gary will pull 4 feet forward from that. So you know that he knows that that he doesn't have to listen to you, if that makes any sense. So Lander takes the mountain bike. He's like, those grizzlies know when I pull down on that road, I'm going to drive through a mile and we'll hike back. And Lander's going to take the mountain bike. So he drops us off. Lander drives through, drives the mountain bike back. I got photos of Lander on the bike, right? And we're just sitting there right on a road.
You're on a bike, Mr. Incredible.
Yeah. Mr. Incredible. We're just literally, we're here. 15 yards out is a dirt road, right? And then it's just giant field, and I'm like, obviously you got to hunt the bears where they are. That's where that bear's at. We sit there forever, and I'm taking photos of everything, and I'm getting sick at this point. I'm hacking up a lung, right? I've got a serious chest infection, and Lander's like, I'm going to drive to the truck, right? It's 15 minutes till dark, maybe 20. He doesn't have a headlamp.
Yeah.
Literally 30 seconds after he's out of my sight, we can hear something coming from where we think I'm going to have this bow shot. I've got my bow. The bear obviously has been there, done that. He trots right by me at about 50 yards across the road, and I'm like, and he knows what's up. That's a danger area, right? Danger close. He runs across, and he gets in that big field, and I'm like, there's no way I can kill him, right? Even shooting at 120, I couldn't kill him. He was way out in the field. So this is the part where I'll probably get bashed. Not for shooting it with a gun, but I look down and Dave's got a gun, right? And anyway, so Lander comes back, and I grab the gun, or it was Lander's gun. I have no idea what caliber it is at all. And
it's a bear gun.
It's a bear gun. So I reach in my pocket because I had 3 downstairs and grabbed 3 extras. And I'm like, 308. Are you shitting me? Like, that's the worst ballistic coefficient on the planet. I know enough about guns to know that. And I think he had like 185 or 200 grains up front. I can't remember. I think it was 185 maybe. Because I don't know they make it 200 grains for a 308, but they might. Either way, I'm using my fingers and toes here because I'm ranging the bear. And I get to where I think I can hit it because it's getting low light. So I lay down, and keeping in mind the guy's gun is a midget that I had in my hand, I lay up, and that scope is in my eyeball. And I'm like, dang. So I'm trying to lean back, and I'm like, man, there's no way I'm going to hit this thing at this distance. So I kind of take my jacket and pat it between, like basically try to add a bigger cushion. And I lay down, and now I'm thinking, don't flinch because you know the scope's going to smoke your eyeball, right? And I'm like, so.
Yeah, I shot Anthony's daughter's rifle
Yeah.
a few years ago on a bear hunt after hunting all these days with a bow, and it was the last day, and there was a bear. It was getting toward, I was like, okay, I'm going to shoot a rifle. And I had his daughter's rifle, and I had shot it earlier, and it was touch and go with the scope. I mean, it was like, it brushed me a couple times. It's such a little gun. And I got in there on the moment. That thing clocked me so hard.
Yeah, Dave was laughing because this was it was a far shot, right? But I'm good with shooting, so I'm like, just Aaron, breathe,
Make this count.
Make it count. Yeah, exactly. So, boom, and I knew I didn't ginch the trigger, but that scope hit so freaking hard, it rocked me, right? And so I'm like, dang, and I can't see crap. I can't see if I hit it.
You bleeding in your eyeball.
Oh, yeah, my eye cup's full. So I leaned back to Dave and Lantern. I'm like, did I hit it? And they were like pointing down, and I'm like, low is what I'm like. And I mean, at that distance,
shot low.
And I'm like, so finally I just like, did I miss? And they're like, dude, you smoked it. And blood is just pissing down my face at this time. And Lander, he's like, dude, you hammered it. I think you heart shot it. And so, I was excited, right? I've wanted to shoot a grizzly forever. And so, it ran about 40 yards and piled up like a heart shot.
Yeah.
And, I still got a little bit of a ring on my eyeball from this whole ordeal. And Lander was laughing because the guy's gun, it was a 1.5 by 5. Not a lot of dialing it up to 5, right? Crank it up.
It's for close range.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, it's a brush gun. It's a bear gun. And so we get up to it, and it was just an average grizzly. It wasn't a giant. It was 7'8". So it wasn't, I mean, it's all grizzlies are big, but it wasn't a giant
Well,
grizzly.
that's one thing I was very curious about because I've never seen one on the ground,
Yeah.
You shot a very large 7-foot black bear. This grizzly is probably 7.5.
I think it was 7'8" nose to tail, but it squared at 8 foot.
So not too much different than the black bear. I mean, bigger, but
yeah, close.
But I was asking you, I'm like, so, but even when you're shooting kind of a smaller grizzly.
Oh yeah, everything's bigger. Like, the claws, obviously, the paws, the pads are bigger, the body's bigger, the head's a lot bigger.
The picture of the claws on your Instagram I was looking at, I was like, those are nothing like a black bear.
No, and that thing was only like a 7-year-old bear, right?
Yeah.
So they're not worn down. Younger bears have longer, claws or whatever. I mean, I was super happy with it, but it was, I'm assuming it was 7 or 8 because it had at least one set of cubs. It was a sow.
Yeah.
So it had at least one set of cubs, meaning, it had to be at least 6 to have one set of cubs. So it was 6 or 7 at least from that. And I think like having to do it all over again, I would have easily shot the bear on the first day last year on the mountain hunt. And that was about a 7-foot plus bear. Now doing it this way, pros and cons, I got to learn about the dog aspect of it, which was amazing. It was unbelievable working with the dogs. Plus hanging out with Lander is always fun. I got a great black bear. I got a good grizzly, and I scoped myself. So that's this very short version of 15 days of 14 days of hunting. We stayed 15 days. Patrick shot a good black bear while he was up there with his rifle. But I mean, overall, the experience I have with landers with grizzlies, when they're down low, if you want to kill a grizzly, just sit on one of those fields. They're coming. There's no way around it. They come every day to one of the fields. So if you sit on one for 10 days,
probably going to.
The reason why we were on the Field of Dreams that night is we had a couple guys. One of them, Kyle, he booked his hunt from listening to the podcast last year. I got to hunt with him quite a bit.
Yeah.
They saw it. They saw a giant bear come out the night before in that field, a giant grizzly. And that's why we were sitting on that field, because that grizzly had come out 2 nights before. So we knew it was gonna. There was grizzlies on the field, so we
Kyle
knew it
was
would come
booked
out.
for a black bear hunt.
He shot one. So Kyle's funny, right? Anybody knows me knows I watch way too much South Park. And Bart and I take out Kyle, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to release those dogs at night. And I liked Kyle. He was funny. Plus, he booked it because of the podcast.
Yeah.
So we go, and it was in the upper property. And I walk around the corner, and there's a bear. And I give Kyle, I guess you could say, missed signals because I'm like, it's not real big. Draw your bow. And he's like, what do you mean not real big? And I'm like, well, it's not giant. It was a 6-foot bear. I should have told him to shoot. Well, he goes to full draw, and he's amped. You can tell he's excited because we're like 40 yards from it, and I'm ranging it, and I'm like, it's 43, and it walks over, and he's like, no, I'm not going to shoot it. I'm like, all right. Well, then Bart spots another one, and we're stalking in on it, and you know how loud that grass is.
Yeah.
And he happened to, and I think he was going to shoot that one, but he stepped on this branch, or how I missed it was blind luck, because it's not like you could see that he didn't do anything wrong is what I'm saying. It's just under the grass is loud. But I'm like, you screwed up that, Kyle, you butthole, because Cartman always says that, because he steps on it and the bear runs out. But he ended up 2 days later shooting a good bear out of a tree stand up in the upper property, and I took a bunch of photos of it the next day. Same day I shot my grizzly. Yeah. So that was cool. I got to hang out with him. There was Mark, another guy up there from professional, the trad, but PBS, not public broadcasting, but Professional Bow Hunter Society.
Yeah.
He was there, a trad guy. So it was a cool trip. As far as I had a lot of questions about clothing, which we can cover all this in a different podcast, but that Kelvin Active jacket was probably one of as far as clothing goes, one of the most exciting things piece of gear I've been excited about in a long time, because I just wore that a lot of times and when it was raining, because it dries so fast and it's quiet and it's a puffy. So I would wear the lightweight Core hoodie, I think is what it's called, and then I would wear over that the Core Crew hoodie, and then I would wear the Kelvin Active over that and poke the hoods out, and it could get soaking wet. And I mean, it would literally be dry in the truck ride home or whatever. So, and then the Timberline pants were a huge benefit because of the padded knees and the butt. The other thing was a problem up there is Devil's Club, and at the very least, my knees from the Devil's Club busting through it would take the brunt of the Devil's Club, because actually you can, on my finger, I had to cut them all. I had thousands of them. I had to cut them out with that Taito knife, but that was super handy. I had some prototype boots I'd bounce back and forth using from Crispy that I really liked. Those were good. And then we tested out prototype packs from Kafaru, so that was another kind of a big benefit, because I got to pack out 3 bears with that pack. Well, I say that one of mine have to pack out 2 bears I packed or whatever, so it's kind of cool while we're up there.
So on the bear, one of the struggles I had on Prince of Wales Island, and it seems to be a struggle every year, and that is judging a bear, sow, boar, judging 6 foot, 7 foot, 8 foot. What is it? 5 foot. It's like, dude, it is so difficult. I think, and it wasn't just me. Everybody in camp struggled with the same thing. And most people there have hunted bears quite a bit, and they all are like, until we get it back on film and really have a chance to look at it, it was tough.
Yeah, and Bart, I was with Bart more than Jeff.
Yeah.
Bart's been on, you can imagine with those dogs, thousands of bears or hundreds, whatever. Anyway, Bart is one of the better ones I've, seen. Lander's really good too, but with Bart, the first thing he's like, I'm not judging a bear at 400 yards away. Not doing it. He's like, I can take a guess. He's like, but unless it has a barrel, a train track, a something beside it, he's like, it's a guess. It's just a black blob. Now, the one thing that part of the story I left out, I almost screwed up, and this is, again, being fully candid on camera. I stalk in on a bear in this huge field, and I'm pretty amped as far as I'm literally in a field with a bear feeding away from me the entire time, and I close the distance from 400 or 500 yards, down to sub 50, and I'm looking at this bear, and I'm like, man. When it finally turned, broadside, I take a knee, and I'm like, man, that thing just looks like a sow. And I'm not that good at telling a sow from a boar. And so I'm looking, and I've got an arrow knocked, and it's a big bear. When I say big, I mean it's well over 6 feet. And I'm watching it, and I'm getting to the point where I'm like, man, I don't want to shoot a sow. Bear, if I don't have to, meaning like if I don't want to, if I'm not beyond 100% of a reasonable doubt, I'm not going to shoot it. Well, as luck would have it, I'm about 10 yards from the wood line, and about myself, 2 cubs were in the tree I was right beside, and they started huffing. I about come undone, right? I was, because they walking in, I'm not looking 20, 30 feet up in a tree. They're hanging out up there. They were never there the entire stalk. One of them was asleep, it looked like, in the tree, and the other one woke up.
Yeah.
Now, bears, I found out, those bears climb up those cottonwoods that are broken off, and they den in them.
Yeah.
I saw one come out.
Yep.
I didn't know that, right?
Yeah, I heard that in a Ranella podcast, a Meat Eater podcast not too long ago. They were talking about how many black bears den at the top of trees.
Well, I think these den in that tree, because there's one dead asleep, and I took cell phone photos of it. So obviously, immediately, I'm like, one, this bear's going to eat me if it sees me. So I'm a little nervous about that, because the cubs.
Oh yeah, the sow and cubs,
and the one's huffing. So now, thank God, black bears are blind, right? They can't see great. I'm 38 yards from this sow, and she's, my estimation, she's probably 6'6", right? She's a big black bear. And the one sow's asleep with its ass hanging off a branch, and the other one's like looking down. And these aren't little cubs; these are they're 2-year-olds, 3-year-old cubs. Yeah. If they haven't been, if they weren't kicked out yet, in another month they're getting kicked out because of the rut. And I'm like, holy cow! So I'm and I've got Gary with me, and Gary is, I don't know, maybe just a little ways behind me, and Gary's looking at me smiling, pointing, and I'm like, oh, I see it, dude. I'm about to have a heart attack. So I popped the arrow off, and Gary and we walked back and got out of there. But as far as like telling the difference, I can tell pretty quickly from looking at the head if it's a good bear. After that, little ears, big ears, how spread they are. Do they have the big crease in their forehead? But like Bart, he's like, oh, that's a long bear. And I'm like, oh, really? He's like, yeah, the longer bears score more. They got the long nose. You got the caveman bears. You got the long-nosed bears. He's naming all these different, it's not a subspecies, but attributes. Yeah. And he's like, that bear I shot, it's a caveman bear. He's like, immediately I can look at that bear and say it's not going over 20 ever because it's a caveman bear. He's like, that bear is a giant bear. Will never go over 20 inches. And then you look at this other bear, black bear that we saw running, and you can just tell it's like Manute Bull, right? It's long, yeah. It's tall. Hakeem Olajuwon.
Those are easier to judge, I think, because we came across a bear that was 7.5, 8 foot. I mean 7.5 for sure. Just this giant, looked like a polar bear.
Yeah,
just all legs and height, and he was standing next to a guardrail on a bridge as he's walking across a bridge on a gravel road. And so you have the guardrail as perspective, and he was 2 times taller than the guardrail.
Yeah.
And we have this video, and he walks down the bridge, and he turns left and goes in the bushes. I got over there to the guardrail, and it was like up to my collarbone, like where he was standing. He's just this huge, but he had this little tiny head and this long neck.
Bart talked about all of that where it confuses people. He's like, most people aren't going to shoot that bear because of stereotypically, belly dragging the ground and the different attributes of what to look for. You get a long bear, you're thinking it's small. The head looks smaller than it is, when in reality, those are the bears that have the genes to score Boone and Crockett.
Yeah.
Because their head is longer, so the dimension from
my bear, my first bear I shot in POW, black bear, 2007. That bear has almost a 21-inch skull.
Yeah.
And then the bear I shot, 2015
looks
way bigger.
Yeah.
Way bigger. Head is just massive. His skull is the same size.
Yeah.
They score almost within 1/8 of an inch of each other.
Yeah, the one you shot in 15 was a caveman bear.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the head looked way larger than my long bear. But the long bear, like you're talking, was my 2007. I put those skulls on the ground side by side, and it's almost 2 times as long. The muzzle is longer. Everything is just way longer than the other bear. And so when you're looking at those caveman bears, their heads are so wide that you just think they're huge to me. And
that one I killed, dude. When it came out, I was like, wow. And I've shot a lot of, well, you have too. I mean, we've both shot a lot of bears. I've shot a shit ton of bears.
Yeah.
I still don't know what I'm doing enough, because unless, if you shoot one bear a year or one bear every 3 years, that's nothing compared to a guy like
Lander
or Bart, where they're like on 25 hunts a year. It is amazing that the perception of when I saw the black bear I killed come out.
Yeah.
That bear immediately I thought was bigger than my North Idaho bear, because my North Idaho bear is a long bear.
Right.
This bear was short, really fat, stomach dragging. You saw how fat it was, super fat. And I mean, again, it's an insane bear, right? But it's not. It's got the caveman gene.
So. Well, and head size isn't necessarily an indication of body size either, because Ben's bear is 21 inches.
Yeah.
And it is one of the biggest bears. The sealer said the biggest bear in 4 years off POW. And then like 4 years prior. So in the last 8 years, it's one of 2 of the biggest bears shot on the island.
Yeah.
Well, Anthony and Ben sat there and looked at that bear for 15 minutes on the GoPro and argued about whether it's big enough to shoot.
Yeah, and it's almost 21 inches.
It's not big enough. No, and they sit there and they debate, and in the end they decide, well, beggars can't be choosy, and so they shoot this bear. Well, they come up on it, and the shoulders, the forearms, the hump on its neck, the size of the neck and the head, I mean, just upper body's giant.
Yeah.
It's a huge bear, but I think it's just 6.5 feet. So my bear doesn't have a 21-inch skull. It's close.
Yeah.
But it's 7.5 feet, my first bear from POW.
Yeah, big one.
And so when you're looking at, how a bear squares, head size isn't necessarily an indicator. Like Ben's bear, actually, when we were showing video of it, Ken, the guy that owns Eagle Lodge, Alaska, where we were staying, he's seen a lot of bears. He killed a lot of bears. He's done a lot of grizzly and brown bear as well. And he was talking to us, and he was like, he saw Ben's bear a few times in the week prior.
Yeah.
As he's cruising up and down fishing.
Yep.
And he's like, he was saying, he said he knew the bear was big, head wise.
Yeah.
But he's like, I was going to be surprised if it went over 6 feet, because the body itself, I mean, it's just a stocky, muscular, thick bear. But all in all, he's not that long.
Yeah. Yep. No, and that makes sense. And I was talking
it's so hard to judge.
Yeah, they're horrible.
I compared it to, it's like human beings.
Yeah.
Ben and Anthony are really different.
Yeah. No,
they're
you're
both
right.
mature men.
No, that is very, very true. I mean, mountain goats are. I have better luck with goats than bears.
Yeah.
I can look at a bear and be like, hey, yeah, shoot it. But I mean, guys, is it 7 foot? Oh, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know. Now Bart and Jeff can do that. I will say, like with just hunting in general, I was telling Bart, I'm like, most guys in the lower 48, not all, but a bear comes out, they don't know if it's 5'5" or 7'5". It's fuzzy and it walks out. They're going to shoot it. Average, I would say, average size of a bear in the lower 48 is probably 175 to 200 pounds for average harvested bears.
Right.
So you get up there, you get spoiled. And there was a guy that had asked about you and I going and hunting with him in another area. It's a bait area or whatever, and they're producing big bears
British
too.
Columbia, I think.
Alberta.
Yeah, you're right, Alberta.
And I'm not against hunting over a bait at all. I'm not, because of how my brain is wired. It's not something I'm real keen on doing personally. But I will say you can judge them better when they're eaten by a garbage can, because that barrel is a huge indicator how big that bear is. Where I got lucky with mine. It was in very green and yellow grass, and it was very bright, had a great silhouette. But there's a few, I'm looking down those railroad tracks, because there's tracks everywhere, and it's darker down them. The only thing I had to go off of was the 2 tracks, right?
Yeah.
Other than that, it was just a big black blob. I had no idea.
Well, when I was talking to Ken, I was like, at the end of the day, does it really matter? If you shoot a 5.5, 6.5 foot bear, can you even tell when you get that thing home? And he was talking about it. He's like, people are guys that come up to POW. Sometimes it's once in a lifetime, right? Yeah. They're going to Southeast Alaska. They're doing it once, and other guys do it every other year, right? Yeah. But he said, at the end of the day, when you get that bear up there and you take a 5.5 foot and a 6 foot, or 5.5 foot and a 6.5 foot bear, and you get them back, they go to the taxidermist, they come back, and you have 2 rugs. They look the same.
Yeah.
There's really, especially because the taxidermist can stretch that thing.
Yeah.
They'll do stuff with the head on a different mannequin or whatever. And so at the end of the day, a lot of times your bear doesn't even look like, there's very little difference between, when big is big, basically, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
You get to a point where a big bear is a big bear. Ben's bear being about 6 foot, it's a big bear.
Yeah. Yeah, and the skull on his was huge. It actually looks funny in that photo because his head is so big and his body is so small. Not small, but small.
From the shoulders back, from behind the shoulder back, he's kind of cool looking because he's so dominant in the upper body, and then he's got that little small back end.
Yeah, yeah.
And so he just looks more grizzly-ish.
Yeah,
in a way.
Yeah. For sure.
Without that big ass, but then my bear is just the whole back end of it. It's just a big, giant, fat blob. Just massive, fat bear. And those butterball bears, to me, are the hardest to judge.
Yeah. All right, we were just about finished anyway. We ran out of juice. So the one thing I would say is if you hunt with Jeff Lander with Primitive Outfitting, those are not poppy seeds in the bed. When you first get there, it's mouse. So be prepared for that. And there are lots of bears in British Columbia. Stay gritty.
The future of public lands. All of us own them, all of us use them. Political activists are demanding us to hand over the public lands where the state legislators could transfer and control these lands. U.S. citizens own 640 million acres of public lands, which creates 6.1 million jobs and generates $646 billion per year.
States have been selling off land to pay bills for over 100 years, thus closing access to the public. 39% of original 64 million acres have been sold. The cost of land management would break most state budgets. For instance, who will pay the hundreds of millions of dollars to fight major wildfires each year? It doesn't matter how many promises are made. The financial reality is it will force states to have to sell off our public land.
President Theodore Roosevelt said, "We must preserve our lands for future generations, not merely to the people now alive, but to the unborn people. Our duty to the whole bids us restrain an unprincipled present-day minority from wasting the heritage of these unborn generations."
This is Primitive Outfitting, and you were listening to the Gritty Bowmen.
Chicken. Wow.
Nice. And I'm not standing on my high horse saying I shoot a self bow, because there's no way in hell I'm shooting a self bow. When I say that, I mean that in a good Christian way.
As far as Cecil goes with me, I could really give a crap about that lion too much.
And all I was looking at was the tip of Aron's arrow. And it was like this and this, and then it was kind of shaking, and then it went boom, solid like a rock. And I'm like, oh.
He's like, I get to know if you hit anything or not. You never really show excitement, because I don't. I'm kind of always mellow. And this thing, ready to jerk a tear. I was running around like an idiot. Woo! If you ever talk to anybody from Africa, they're all about hunting lions because they eat people. Yeah. The compound, I have total confidence. With this thing, I'm like, yeah, maybe. But the way that America works, we're so soft, like softer than baby. All of us, basically.
The shooting errors, I'm going to call it Matrix effect. I panicked.